I'm 85 years old, and to be honest, I never imagined that something so simple and familiar could bring such a profound change to my life. For over 15 years, I lived with a constant, nagging pain. It started in my knees, then moved to my hands, and eventually settled in my lower back. It wasn't the kind of pain that forced me to stay in bed, more like a deep, dull ache that never went away. The kind that made mornings heavier and everyday tasks feel like a burden. Over time, I started moving more slowly. I felt less steady on my feet. I lost interest in things that used to bring me joy. I tried many things. Doctors, physical therapy, prescription medications, gentle stretches. Sometimes I saw a bit of improvement, but it never lasted. Eventually, I told myself, maybe this is just how it's going to be for the rest of my life. And I quietly started to accept it. Then something unexpected happened. Not long ago, I came across a simple recipe using turmeric, a common kitchen spice that many people forget they even have. At first, I was skeptical. After all those years and all those treatments, how could something so ordinary make any real difference? But then I thought, why not? I've tried so much already. What do I have to lose? So I gave it a try. I followed the recipe. I took it every day. And within just a few days, I began to feel a difference. The pain didn't completely disappear, but it eased up noticeably. More importantly, I felt a signal from my body that maybe, just maybe, healing was still possible if I listened and gave it the right support. That's why I'm sharing my story today. I'm not offering medical advice, and I don't claim this is the answer for everyone. But if you're looking for a gentler, more practical path, this might be something worth exploring. Before we go any further, I'd love to hear a bit about you. Where are you from and how old are you? If you feel comfortable, leave a comment below. I'd really like to know how your own journey is going. It all started with a slight twinge in my left knee, just a small sting whenever I climbed the stairs or got up from a chair. Nothing serious. I thought it was just part of getting older. But over time, that sensation became more noticeable. It wasn't just a fleeting discomfort anymore. It became real pain, showing up more and more in my daily life. Not long after, my right knee started acting up too. Then it moved to my hips and eventually to both of my hands. I began struggling with tasks that once felt effortless, unlocking a door, opening a jar, buttoning a shirt. Every morning, my fingers felt stiff and uncooperative. Sometimes, I had to pause for a few minutes just to do something that used to take seconds. I found myself moving slower, not because I wanted to, but because I no longer felt steady on my feet. I had to look down more often, think through every step I took. And little by little, I started pulling back from life, not because I had to, but because I didn't want to risk making the pain worse. Sleep became another battle. I'd often wake up in the middle of the night, shifting around to find a position that hurt less. Some nights, I was lucky enough to get a few hours of rest, but other nights I just lay there in silence, waiting for morning to come. I tried nearly everything I could get my hands on over-the-counter pain relievers, anti-inflammatory meds, always cautiously, worried about side effects, creams, gels, patches. I massaged my knees every evening, hoping the warmth meant it was working. I went to physical therapy, followed every instruction to the letter. Sometimes I felt better, but it never lasted. The pain always came back, like a cycle I couldn't escape. I followed advice from friends, read articles, and tried health supplements that were being talked about everywhere. Anytime someone said, "This might help," I gave it a try. Deep down, I wanted to believe there was still something, anything, that could bring me back to who I used to be. Then one day, I found myself standing in front of the mirror after spending the whole afternoon indoors because walking had become too difficult. What I saw wasn't just a tired body. It was someone who had been through the same loop too many times, someone who had hoped over and over again and now was afraid to hope anymore. I remember thinking, very clearly, maybe this is my limit. Maybe pain is just going to be a part of me from now on. But still, Some small part of me didn't want to give up. Something inside kept whispering, maybe there's still something you haven't tried yet. Not a miracle, not an empty promise, just a realistic possibility. It didn't have to be a cure, just a sliver of hope enough to keep me going. One Saturday afternoon, while I was chatting on the phone with my granddaughter, Katie, I mentioned that lately, I couldn't walk for more than half an hour because of knee pain. Even though she lives in another state, we've kept the habit of calling each other every week. That day, after I shared my struggles, Katie was quiet for a moment, then said something that made me stop and think. "Have you ever tried turmeric?" I laughed. I told her I had a jar of turmeric tucked away in my kitchen cabinet, one I'd used once for curry, then forgot about completely. I'd never thought of it as something related to health. Katie gently said, "Maybe you could look into it a little. I'm not saying you should stop taking what your doctor prescribed, but sometimes the simplest things can make a real difference." That evening, I opened my laptop and started reading. At first, just a few general articles, then gradually I found more serious research papers. And they all seemed to say the same thing. Turmeric, with its bright golden color, has been used in traditional Indian medicine for centuries. Not just for flavor, but as a natural aid for inflammation, pain relief, and immune support. What caught my attention most was this. The benefits of turmeric weren't something newly discovered. In fact, it's been part of ancient healing systems for over 2,000 years. In India, they call it gold from the kitchen. In China, it was traditionally used to support joint and digestive health. And now, more and more Western doctors are starting to reevaluate its potential from a modern scientific perspective. I read about curcumin, the main active compound in turmeric, which plays a key role in fighting inflammation. Some studies show that curcumin can help reduce the activity of molecules linked to chronic inflammation, which is associated with joint pain, persistent fatigue, and many other age-related health problems. To understand why this matters, we need to talk a little about inflammation itself. Inflammation isn't always a bad thing. It's actually a natural response from the body when something is wrong. Like when you get a cut or an infection, your body sends more blood and immune cells to help heal the area. That's called acute inflammation, and it's essential for recovery. But trouble starts when that inflammatory response doesn't shut off. When the body keeps sounding the alarm even when there's no real damage anymore, that's called chronic inflammation. And this low-level, ongoing inflammation is linked to many health issues older adults face. Lingering aches and pains, unexplained fatigue, digestive problems, even memory changes, mood shifts, and reduced mobility. The surprising part is that many people live with chronic inflammation without realizing it. They get used to sore muscles, stiff joints, or trouble sleeping. And because the symptoms are quiet and gradual, most don't connect them to inflammation at all. Curcumin, the compound in turmeric, is believed to work at the cellular level to interrupt the inflammation process. It doesn't act like a fast-acting painkiller that masks symptoms. Instead, it works deeper, helping reduce the production of inflammatory molecules in the body. This can ease discomfort, support movement, and, perhaps most importantly, bring a sense of lightness without putting extra strain on the stomach or causing dependency, like some medications can. Of course, turmeric isn't a substitute for medical treatment, but in my case, it became an important part of the support system, a natural way to help bring balance back to a body that felt overwhelmed. Something simple, yet steady enough to make a difference, especially when age makes the body slower to respond to conventional treatments and more in need of gentler solutions. I'll admit, I was skeptical at first. It all sounded a little too good to be true. A common kitchen spice, easy to find, how could it possibly have any real effect? I figured maybe it was just another passing health trend, like so many I'd seen before. But then I came across a doctor's interview that stuck with me. He said, "Turmeric isn't a miracle cure, but when used properly and consistently, It's one of the most effective natural anti-inflammatory agents we have today, especially for older adults dealing with chronic inflammation. I walked back into the kitchen and pulled that jar of turmeric out of the cabinet. Still the same golden color, still the same earthy scent. I placed it on the table, and for the first time in years, I looked at it with real curiosity. After several days of reading and thinking it over, I decided it was time to give it a try. But I didn't want to start with anything complicated. I wasn't looking to hunt down rare ingredients or buy special equipment. I just wanted something simple, easy to make, and doable with what I already had at home. That's when I came across a recipe many people refer to as golden milk. The way I prepare it is very simple. Almost anyone can do it. 1 teaspoon of ground turmeric, a pinch of freshly ground black pepper, 1 cup of unsweetened plant-based milk. I use oat milk, but almond, rice, or even regular dairy milk works too. A half teaspoon of coconut oil, or extra virgin olive oil. A bit of freshly grated ginger. I pour the milk into a small saucepan, add all the other ingredients at once, and turn the heat to low. While it warms, I stir gently to keep the turmeric and ginger from sticking to the bottom. I never let it come to a full boil, just a gentle heat until a bit of steam rises, then I keep it there for about 5 minutes. After that, I strain the mixture through a fine mesh to remove any pulp, let it cool slightly, and sip it slowly. The flavor is quite unique. There's an earthy tone from the turmeric, a mild kick from the pepper, but when blended with the milk and oil, it becomes surprisingly smooth and comforting. Some people like to add raw honey for taste, but personally, I prefer it just the way it is. One important thing I learned: the black pepper isn't just for flavor, it's essential. It contains a compound called piperine, which helps your body absorb curcumin, the active ingredient in turmeric, far more effectively. Without the pepper, most of the curcumin gets flushed out before it can do much good. So even a small pinch makes a big difference. At first, I misunderstood a few things. I thought, like many people do, that more turmeric would be better, but that's not true. Taking too much doesn't make it more effective. It only makes the taste harder to enjoy. The real key is consistency, not large doses. I also tried using the microwave once to make it faster, but the results weren't the same. The best method I've found is gently heating it on the stove, no rush, no shortcuts, just part of a daily routine to care for myself. I drink golden milk in the evening before bed. No coffee, no tea. Just one warm, simple cup that reminds me I'm doing something good for my body. The warmth helps me relax, but more than that, the act of making it, that quiet moment for myself, reminds me that I still have some control, however small, over my own well-being. And to me, that's what matters most. It's not about expecting a dramatic change overnight. It's about giving your body a chance to recover, little by little. Patiently, consistently, and gently, that's how I began this journey. On the first day, I didn't expect much. I just followed the recipe, drank the mixture like a small experiment. That evening, I sat in the kitchen, holding a warm cup of golden milk, sipping slowly. The taste was earthy, a bit strong, slightly spicy, full of turmeric and ginger. Not exactly pleasant, but not unpleasant either. It reminded me of simple, familiar things we tend to overlook. Still, in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but wonder, could something this simple really make a difference? I went to bed with no expectations, no hopes for a miracle, just a thought: what do I have to lose by trying? The next morning, I woke up like usual. My fingers were still stiff. I still wobbled a bit getting out of bed. But as I walked out to make breakfast, I noticed something. I was moving with a little more ease. I stepped over the threshold without needing to grip the frame like I usually did. The pain hadn't disappeared, but the heaviness had eased just slightly. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe it was just a good day. But by the end of that day, I noticed I was walking more steadily. I didn't feel so unsure with every step, and I thought to myself, maybe this isn't just coincidence. On the second night, I made the mixture again, but this time with more focus. It wasn't just another habit. I paid attention to each step, measuring the turmeric, adding the pepper, gently warming the milk. As I stirred, I found myself thinking, I wonder what tomorrow will feel like. That little sense of anticipation, as small as it was, felt like a turning point. It gave me something to look forward to. And in that moment, that alone felt deeply meaningful. On the third morning, things felt different. I didn't need to massage my hands for 10 minutes before opening the door like I usually did. I stepped outside and walked down the hallway without the usual pressure in my knees. The stiffness wasn't gone, but it was lighter. More importantly, the fear of movement began to fade. Before, every action came with hesitation, fear of pain, fear of losing balance. But that afternoon, I bent down to pick up a piece of paper from a low shelf, and it wasn't until I stood back up that I realized. I'd done it naturally, no bracing myself, no holding my breath, no second guessing. When your body hurts all the time, movements like that slowly disappear from daily life. You stop doing anything that might cause discomfort. You stop bending down, stop reaching high, stop walking quickly. But after a few days, I felt like my body was trying to remember those things again, not the way it used to, but without the fear it once carried. The fourth day was the one that truly moved me. I'm not sure what made the biggest difference, the turmeric, the steady routine, or just the lift in my spirits. But that day, I felt it clearly. I was beginning to regain control over my body. I walked more confidently. I made breakfast on my own. I walked a lap around the yard, and I called Helen a dear old friend. I told her I felt like I was recovering, not in the way commercials talk about getting cured, but in the quiet sense of regaining agency. She paused for a moment, then laughed. See, sometimes what helps you isn't in the medicine cabinet, it's in the kitchen. It sounded so simple, but to me it was a powerful reminder, not of something grand, but of the small things we can do for ourselves, quietly, intentionally, and consistently. That night as I lay in bed, I realized something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Not because the pain was gone, but because I knew deep down something inside me was shifting, slowly but genuinely. I understood then. My body wasn't broken. It just needed the right signal, the right kind of support to begin healing in its own way. And in that moment, I had the clearest sense that after all these years, I was finally coming back into my own body. Not a miracle, not the answer to everything, but absolutely a meaningful beginning, a return, a quiet reminder that even in our 80s, there are still paths worth taking, still moments worth choosing to begin again. After nearly 2 weeks of staying consistent, I began to better understand what was really happening. This wasn't some quick switch being flipped. There was no magical moment where the pain just vanished. Instead, it felt more like slowly opening a window, little by little, letting in light and fresh air. Gentle, but real. My body began to respond not all at once, but at its own pace. Each day, I felt more stable when moving, found it easier to stand up, and began sleeping more deeply. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it no longer dominated my every thought. And most importantly, I no longer felt trapped inside my own body. I still continued taking the medications prescribed to me. I didn't ignore my doctor's advice. But I realized that taking care of our health doesn't always have to be an either-or situation. Sometimes, we can combine the best of modern medicine with natural approaches, as long as it works for our body. The turmeric blend didn't give me instant results, but it gave me something else, a sense of agency. Instead of just waiting around for the pills to work, I knew I was doing something proactive every day in my own way. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned is this: relief doesn't come from one single thing. It comes from a system of small, sustainable habits. For me, it started with a cup of golden milk, but it didn't end there. I began walking for 15 minutes each morning around my yard. I made changes to my diet, cutting back on fried foods, reducing sugar, and adding more vegetables and fruits. I started going to bed earlier and turned off my devices before sleep. And perhaps most importantly, I made space for quiet time where I didn't let my mind spiral into unnecessary worry. I also realized that inflammation, no matter where it shows up in the body, isn't just about joints or muscles. It can be fueled by long-term stress, unresolved emotions, and mental fatigue. That's why changing your lifestyle, including how you think and feel, can make a big difference. If you're thinking of starting, here's my personal advice, not as an expert, but simply as someone who's been where you are. Choose high-quality turmeric powder with a clear source. Don't skip the black pepper. It's the key to helping your body absorb curcumin. You don't need high doses. One small spoonful a day is enough. Stay consistent, ideally drink it at night. And most importantly, pay attention to your body's signals. No one knows your body better than you do. You don't need to do everything perfectly. You don't have to force results right away. What matters most is that you're choosing to care for yourself. And sometimes, that simple act, the honesty in how we treat our bodies, is what makes the most lasting difference. At 85, I've come to realize that feeling better doesn't always come from big, dramatic changes. Sometimes, it begins with something very small, like making yourself a warm cup of milk. And in that quiet moment, you send your body a simple message. I'm still here. I still care about you. And strangely enough, when we offer our body patience and respect, it often responds, not with grand gestures, but with small, steady improvements that are truly worth appreciating. If you're living with daily pain, if getting out of bed each morning feels like losing a little more motivation, I understand, I've been there, and I've doubted everything too. But if there's still a little curiosity in you, a small bit of hope, maybe that's enough to try something new. Not out of desperation, but because you deserve to feel better. I'm not saying this recipe is the answer to everything, but I truly believe that every act of self-care has value. Whether it's trying golden milk or something else that suits your body better, do it with honesty. It doesn't have to be perfect. What matters is that you don't give up on yourself. I'd also love to hear your story. Have you tried any natural remedies before? What has made a difference for you? Share in the comments. I always read them. And if you think someone else might find hope in this video, don't hesitate to send it their way. Sometimes a small gesture can brighten someone's whole day. Finally, if this felt meaningful to you, consider subscribing. There are many more simple, helpful things I'd love to share, because every age deserves a little relief, and every small step toward health, freedom, and peace is a step worth taking.